This is a 26-foot Bartender. It was first registered in 2011 and then actually christened and put into service in April of 2012. It was built over the course of about 6.5 years after purchasing plans from George Calkins, who was the designer of this particular brand of boat.
Nice boat.
George had his boat building plant at Lincoln City, Oregon, and was very impressed with the dories that came in and out of the surf near Cape Kiwanda and other areas in that general vicinity, and wanted to design a boat that had all the wonderful sea-keeping properties of the dories and yet had the strength and speed of a powerboat. This particular model is based off the cruising hull, which is a little bit deeper and a little bit wider than the 26-foot sport model. The boat is built, sheathed in marine plywood, Okome plywood. The framing is kaya, also known as African mahogany. Some white oak in appropriate places, like near the stems, some of the spray rails and guardrails. The entire exterior of the hull and the decks and cabin top and rooftop are then sheathed with fiberglass. All the other interior areas are all epoxy encapsulated. Fastenings on the outside of the hull and everything below the waterline is silicon bronze with stainless steel in appropriate areas above the waterline in the cabin and so forth. The trailer I purchased new. Of course, it was heavily customized. They put the guard in the back to protect the running gear and also installed a ladder in the front to make it easy to get aboard when you're at a ramp or a place like this. Try to go up the ladder. See, it comes equipped with anchor, Lumar windlass. It has approximately 10 feet of chain and 300 feet of 3-strand line for a rode. The boat has a full suite of electronics. You see the radome on top, all Garmin electronics. Air scoop and Dory vent feed the blowers to the engine compartment. see now is the access down to the rudder and the bilge blowers and one of the bilge pumps. There's also a hatch on the aft deck that it goes to a small storage compartment. I found that very useful for fishing supplies and things that are dirty you don't want inside the boat. Of course, a nice mooring post. Side storage. And a view aft looking forward into the cockpit area. There's seating for 4, although we found we also put additional seating on the aft deck. One of the priorities during this build was safety. And one of the things that has been very nice is this tall railing and high coaming. There's absolutely no way someone's going to fall out of this boat. You feel very secure and have lots of places to hold on to. The boarding ladder clips on and off, can be placed on either port or starboard side, so it doesn't matter which side you're coming into the dock. Different hatches allow access down into the bilge as necessary. This happens to go down into where the transducer and washdown pump are located. A manual pump. There are actually 3 bilge pumps aboard this boat. One electric amidship, one electric aft, and this manual one, in case everything else is gone, it also runs amidship. Binocular holders, throttle, and of course the console. Chose to put the sink and cooking area on the outside. Figured that most of our time would be spent not in the cabin but outside, which has proved to be true. That countertop either hangs down, and I have a gimbaled stove that hangs on the stainless bracket, or else you can flip it up to give yourself more counter space. Inside the cabinet is a 5-gallon water supply, an electric on-demand pump, feeds into the sink. And again, all Garmin electronics. For the main electronics, that's a Garmin 4212 chart plotter, which is synced obviously with the radar, the fish finder, also the autopilot, which is the smaller screen in the center of the display right now. Really a handy item to have. Plot a route, tell the boat to take you there, and it will. There are twin 60-gallon fuel tanks for a total of 120 gallons aboard this boat, so we have the displays for both port and starboard tanks, how much fuel you have, your gauges, horn, hour meter, bilge pumps, and there's also a windlass switch there. I have windlass switches both out on the deck by the windlass itself and here at the helm, so the windlass can be operated at both locations. Small T-handle in the center is a trolling valve control. One of the really nice features with This particular setup is that by activating that, we can slow this boat down to a crawl, which makes it very nice for trolling for salmon. And then into the cabin. AM/FM radio. This is just a V berth. I happen to be 6'2" and find that I fit very, very comfortably in it and can stretch out completely. One of the things during the build, I was very careful to thoroughly document everything that we did. So there's full documentation in all the parts and pieces of the boat, as well as obviously is the engine owner manual. If I can get down into the cabin. The hatch there forward gets you into the storage area for the anchor rod. Feeds down into there by the windlass that can be opened up to air it out. There's storage underneath the berth. One large locker forward and one each on each side. Find this is a nice place for storage. Items hang, or we've just got other hanging amenities here. This goes with the boat. Underneath the stairway down into the cabin is where the porta potty is stored. Fits very nicely there and rides perfectly. This nice large cabinet door is the access to the electronics. One of the things that I'd always found was that usually it's so hard to work on any of the wiring on a boat, and this gives wonderful access. And looking out, you see the different hatches. Storage underneath the helm seating for those things that you use all the time, and comes in very handy. Shot looking into the electronics console. This is again on the back side of the helm. This boat's equipped with shore power. Got an isolator. It's very nice to come up to a dock and be able to plug in, and that automatically recharges the batteries if they're needed. All the wiring is carefully labeled, and the wiring legend is available and comes with the boat. There are twin batteries, one for house and one for engine and starting. Has the Blue Sea isolator, so it charges both as appropriate. Everything protected by the correct fuses or fuse panels. The storage area you see directly in the middle there that pops out. That gives you access to the bilge below the batteries, and there's one of the middle bilge pumps right there. This is the hatch that's directly below the helm. You see a reservoir for window washer, not something you commonly see in boats this size, as well as the pump for the hydraulic steering in the autopilot. This is the storage area on the port side, directly below the sink. I find this very useful for just miscellaneous storage of additional lines and washdown pump, hoses, that type of thing. Also, it houses the marine battery charger, which is to the right. This is the cabinet below the sink, showing the water supply. Again, a 5-gallon water supply, which we found to be very adequate. The waste then can be piped into the white plastic container to the left or overboard, as again is appropriate depending on your location. Obviously also storage for the fire extinguisher. This shows the anchor locker up in the bow. chain and rode is fed down from above from the windlass. And of course the power plant. This boat is powered by a Crusader 5.7 liter gas powered engine. It's multi-port fuel injected. It's always started immediately, is run like a top. As of this recording, it has just under 200 actual hours on it. It was purchased new and installed new with the boat. Actually sat without being run for a couple of years while the boat was completed. It's freshwater cooled. Has a PSS dripless shaft to the transmission. Filters are remote to give easy access. Has 330 horsepower and pushes this boat very nicely. You can throw the throttle to it, and I have had it up in excess of 30 knots for short bursts. Normally I don't run it over 4 grand, and at 4 grand, depending on how you're weighted and loaded and sea conditions, you're running between 21 and 23 knots and burning about 2 nautical miles gas at the rate of 2 nautical miles per gallon. At the same time, you can also throttle back and just go into cruise mode and run in displacement mode at just barely over an idle. Of course, you're sipping gas at that point, and this boat handles either way very, very nicely. This is the rear hatch, showing access down to the rudder post. Also that's the pump, the arm for the hydraulic steering. Gives you access to the bilge blowers that are on either side, as well as the aft bilge pump. The deck is self-bailing, and almost all water runs out. There's a little bit of leakage around different hatches, which is not a problem. I've always just opened up that rear hatch and used a sponge or a rag to sop up any minor water that might have gotten in there over the voyage if I was using the washdown pump or hosing off the boat to clean it off. The water then comes out through these scuppers and the floor and the deck on either side. The black item, by the way, is a place to put your lead cannonballs if you're using the downriggers. And last but not least, the hatch just to the rear of the engine with the washdown pump and the through-hull transducer for the fish finder, as well as obviously the muffler as it exits from the engine. And a shot of the helm and the cabin doors as they're shut. Also notice there the wireless remote control for the autopilot. That's a very nice feature. You don't have to sit right at the helm. Obviously you have to maintain a proper lookout at all times, but especially when we're fishing, I can be to the rear of the boat helping net a fish if we're out in the ocean and know their boats are around, and I can still control the boat from aft. And a VHF radio with DSC, also slaved to the GPS, so it shows your coordinates. It has an 8-foot digital antenna, and the reception is excellent.